Hi, welcome to Access. I'm Nicole.
I'm Ken.
And today we're doing 2 Corinthians.
So it'd be great if you haven't read or heard the lectures on 1 Corinthians to go back and hear those, because we're not going to be able to go through all of the history again. But suffice it to say, there's a letter to 1 Corinthians written in the mid-50s from Paul to this community in Corinth that is this wild riot of craziness. And
ragtag bunch of hooligans.
And here, there may be multiple letters. We're not sure. But here's a second letter. It's to the same group. And if the first letter, Paul is trying to kind of, I think you put it best with, it's like, Paul's got 8 kids, and he's like, you, over here, you, in the corner, you. Here, Paul is actually writing a kind of kinder, gentler letter to them saying, gosh, I wish we could just be friends again.
Well, it's kind of like when...
Bake up.
Well, no, like when I nanny, or I've seen my friends who are parents do this, it's like you punish your kid, like you go to timeout and be like, timeout! But like in those last 30 seconds of timeout, you go and go, you know, we're good. You know I still love you, right? Like, that's what I feel like 2 Corinthians.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. It's also a fundraising letter, and it's kind of funny. He actually talks about another community that's done really well, and he's saying to the 2 Corinthians, like, I only tell you that because I know you wouldn't want to be outdone. You know? So I'm not trying to pressure or anything, but I mean, those guys really, they really did great. Now,
they put their money where their mouth is.
No pressure, but I just know, you'd want to step. It's brilliant. So Paul's very sneaky.
I want to know your competition.
And then, and I promised too to show you how the 2 letters link. In the first letter, Paul has this guy who is sleeping with his father's wife, and they're very upset about this. Paul's so upset, he says, put him out in the community. In the second letter, he says, and I wrote to you about this person who had been put out, and he says, it's time to restore them. He says, forgiveness is the most important thing. He says, it's been long enough, you've punished him hard enough, and now it's time to bring him back into the fold. And so the first letter is talking about you need to have boundaries. And you can't let somebody walk all over you and cause terrible pain in your life. But in the second letter, he says, it's time to have forgiveness. And he actually talks about being the fragrance of Christ, and that's kind of sniffed, if you will, by our forgiveness. So I was concerned about the term fragrance of Christ.
Because he'd probably be stinky.
Not a lot of deodorant in the first century.
No, and he walked a lot.
but apparently for Paul, the fragrance is a good thing.
The risen Christ, because I would imagine he was clean.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Because they say
and he had probably
shining and clean robes.
Balm and well, he was massaged a lot. Like, Yeah, okay. I think that's what we'll say. I would say, too, there are these hugely complicated theories about how the letters of Corinthians, where there are like at least 4 theories. Don't worry about all of that until you've read both of these letters and get to know them a little bit. But well, I'll say that enough with the theme. You want to go with the themes?
Okay, yeah, sure. I'll hit some themes. So Paul uses the words faith and love and hope a lot. And I was reading how it's interesting in the series of Corinthians that faith is kind of his gloss for being right with God, okay, and righteousness. And love is his gloss for being right with others and being right in the community. And that hope is kind of being right with yourself.
Huh. Oh, interesting.
Interesting, huh?
That's nice.
So I think it's in Corinthians when it's like the greatest of these is faith, hope, and love.
Right, and the greatest of these is love. That's the 1 Corinthians 13. That's your favorite passage.
I know, but I thought I'd bring it in here. And doesn't that so jive with what Corinthians is being right with each other. Checking your phone on the video.
I was turning it off. Sorry, Katie Pate, you called me.
He'll call you back. Okay. And so we're getting more of these kind of ideas about how to be a community. It's much gentler. It's much more themes of reconciliation.
Yes.
A
which we'll get to.
huge theme in 2 Corinthians.
It is kind of a broken up letter, too.
Yeah.
1 Corinthians has more of a cohesiveness to it. Second is sort of
It's even more
jumbled a little
fragmented.
bit. Yeah. So if it feels like that to you, it's not you.
Mm-hmm.
It's Paul.
It's Paul. And also, like, it's an intimate letter. And they have their own relationship going on, and we only see one side. And even that, we only see pieces of the one side. And so, for them, it's how he's going makes a lot of sense. I think it's also there's this theme of the delicacy of community, how it can be broken easily, and that we need to stop that from happening, or when it gets broken, we need to repair it. So those are kind of the themes. You see any more themes?
No, I think that's great. You're gonna hit us with Jars of Clay.
Jars of Clay, one of my favorite super Christian bands.
Something 40 days. How does it go? Oh, lift me up. I don't really know much from them. But.
No. But if you need a CD, let me know. So in chapter 4, we get this image of jars of clay, of how God, through Christ, uses us for ministry, and that we keep our treasures in jars of clay. And at the same, like, it's the humbleness of us. That's
the humility.
Humility.
Yeah.
I don't like the word humility that much because it's, in our context, it has all the shame around it. So I like humbleness.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because that doesn't have the shame part.
All the humility without the shame.
It's humbleness. Like, got me off track.
Jars of clay.
Jars of clay.
It's an interesting image.
It is, and I think that's where kind of this fragility comes in, and ordinariness of the people that God works through, kind of combating against that. Some of the problems in 1 Corinthians of people thinking too much of themselves.
I hear that.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody just last week, actually, who loves this passage. And I asked her, what does that image mean to you? Because I confess, I've always heard this image, jars of clay, and I never really thought about it much. And then when I did, I was like, what does that mean? And she had an interesting take. She said that it's our cracks. It's the cracks in the clay that make, for instance, if it's holding a candle, that's what lets the light out. And I just thought that, it's our broken places, it's our quirks, if you will, that make us interesting and make us useful. And I thought, I never thought about that.
Yeah, and it reminds me, because seriously, I'm convinced that Paul is just echoing the prophets all the time, of the potter and the clay.
Right, yeah.
Of being
Jeremiah,
formed.
yeah.
Jeremiah being formed and reformed constantly.
Yeah.
That the community is being formed and reformed and shifting and changing. And so that's where I get like this fragileness and ordinariness, but also this wonderful creativity. And when you think about jars of clay, no two jars are exactly alike. They come in different shapes and sizes, and they're all different, but they're all functional. Yeah. And I like the jars of clay. I just think there's so many ways you can read it, and all of them kind of go towards the
well, it's so
healthiness
cool
of the
he doesn't
community.
Spell it out.
Right.
That's leaves it to you and I to.
Paul leaves a lot to the imagination, and he uses these great images that work on so many different levels, which is great.
Yeah.
You want to hit the next one?
Yeah.